Hi, I'm Eric Johnson, Dean of Vanderbilt's Business School, and I'm here today with Melissa Thomas Hunt. Melissa is Vice Provost of Inclusive Excellence, and I'm just so happy to have you here, Melissa, to talk a little bit about inclusion at Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Eric. I'm delighted to be here.
Tell us a little bit about what success means at Vanderbilt. When you think about diversity and inclusion, what does success mean?
Absolutely. Well, it starts a little bit with my title, Inclusive Excellence. So Inclusive Excellence is really Vanderbilt's commitment to the success and positive affirmation of all. It's really important to talk about both success and positive affirmation. On the success side, I think we often think about, how well are you performing on like objective metrics and like what opportunities do you have, while you're here and beyond. And those are absolutely incredible things. The positive affirmation piece of it is really meant, how do you feel about being here? How did you feel seen? Did you feel treated well and valued? And those two are really, really important. And so when we really think broadly about success, we have to think of both. And so I've actually, along with the provost and many other leaders here, we've had conversations, talked about, what should some of our goals be so that we can actually define success. And in particular, we want a broad array of individuals who come to us from around the globe and are here at Vanderbilt leveraging their experience and their expertise. It's not just enough to get this broad array here. We actually have to make sure that they are succeeding, right? That they're doing well, that they're availing themselves of the resources that we have to offer, that they feel that the potential that we saw in them, be they staff, faculty, or students, when they came in, and that they saw that they would be able to operate off of when they decided to come into this environment, that they're actually realizing that. And then we also have to make sure that they have an increasing sense of belonging, that Vanderbilt is their place, their space, the place where they feel that they can thrive. So that's what success means to me.
Yeah, thriving, so important. And now you're thriving here. We're so happy that you're at Vanderbilt.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about your career journey. How did you end up in this really cool role at Vanderbilt?
Well, I'm really fortunate, and when I talk to students in particular across the board, I get to tell them, that I took MCATs and GREs and LSATs. So it's a little bit. I did it all. It was a little bit circuitous on the first third of it. I actually have a chemical engineering degree, and it was a really theoretical program. I tend to be a more applied thinker that then abstracts to the theoretical. And so that was really challenging. But IBM was looking to hire individuals as marketing reps who had technical backgrounds. And I'd like to tell my children I was in tech before we called it tech. And so I worked at IBM. I was a marketing rep on a large account team, and I sold to the financial services sector. But what I did a whole lot was negotiating. And the hardest negotiations that I did weren't with my client in the financial services sector. It was actually negotiating internally at IBM to get my clients the things that they needed. I fell in love with negotiations. I've always loved doing research. And thought, well, I should go off and get a PhD, but I didn't want to leave the business world completely. And I found this field called organizational behavior, where I could study negotiations and team dynamics. And that was really the start of my academic career and set me on this trajectory.
And I failed to recognize in the introduction that you are actually a professor of management here in the business school.
I am.
And so tell us a little bit about some of the things that you like thinking about in your research life.
Yeah, so I don't get to do quite as much of it as I would like, but I do have some active collaborations both here and elsewhere. So with some of the folks here, in particular Allison Elias, who's a postdoc here, we're really interested in thinking more about negotiations and the differential impact of negotiating based upon sort of the package you come in. The characteristics that you have and how potentially might your counterpart differentially perceive the way in which you engage as a function of who you are. And so there are a series of experiments. We're beginning to unpack some of those factors and really excited to find out what we find out. I'm also really interested in some of the work that one of my doctoral students back at UVA is engaged in. She's interested in the phenomena of advice seeking, but particularly the circumstances under which we feel more comfortable at seeking advice, and that there might be differences based on class or first gen or continuing gen status in our comfort level. But the really cool thing is that's mitigated based upon what our managers and leaders give off. So if we If we have a leader or a manager who has more of a growth mindset, a belief that people, wherever you start, you can get better rather than a fixed one, that individuals are more likely to seek advice, particularly if they haven't been in those settings before. They feel more comfortable. And that's really, really critical because ultimately in organizations, we're trying to maximize individuals' performance. And sometimes we have to ask questions and we have to get guidance. And so we want everyone to feel comfortable doing that. So there's a couple of the projects I'm working on.
That's neat. So Melissa, diversity has really become a business imperative. But why is diversity so valuable to the business?
So there was a time where we were in a relatively simple environment. That's no longer the case. We live in a time of dynamic change where there's disruptive technology that's being introduced at all points. What we actually need are people who think differently about the problems that businesses face, the problems that populations and people face, so that they can have creative thinking and innovation and bring these insights that previously no one else has thought of. And so by having individuals who contribute diversity, and we all contribute diversity, so it's really about having people who are contributing differences that have historically not been represented, who have a unique lens for seeing what has previously been unseen, that becomes a huge asset to businesses as they look at the horizon and look for new technologies, new advances, products, services, needs that have not been met. And so it's absolutely critical that we have a diversity of individuals who come into our businesses, who come into the business community, and particularly to the Vanderbilt Business School to lend those perspectives and that expertise.
Well, Melissa, thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me here, Eric.